Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for making it to this lunch and learn on soup to nuts preservation of the Sloan-Porter House. I'm Paul Krzea. I'm on the board of trustees, and I'm part of the museum's preservation committee. One of the museum's goals, of course, is to preserve and advocate for the preservation of historic sites and homes, especially homes like the Sloan-Porter House, which was built in 1790. As you may know, the Charlotte Museum of History also preserves an old home, the Hezekiah Alexander House, which was built in 1774, is kept in its historic state. So we are very familiar with the trials and tribulations of preserving and rebuilding historic structures. And I'll have to say I'm awed by the Clarkes' dedication and skill in restoring the Sloan-Porter House. I know it took them some great effort, which they will, I'm sure, go into detail on. And if you've been looking at these pictures, you can see sort of the stunning results that they've had. Also, one of the goals of the museum is to encourage and support others in such restoration. And one way of doing that is through programs like this one. So we're glad that you could all join us today for the program and to help us celebrate Preservation Month. I know we have lots of other great programs at the museum coming up this summer, both virtual and in person. So I hope you'll be able to check those out as well. You can see all of that at charlottemuseum.org. And I hope you can join us. With that, let's get the program started. Kristi Harpst is our moderator today. Kristi is the program manager of the Charlotte Historic District Commission for the Charlotte Planning, Design, and Development Department. Kristi has been a volunteer at the museum in both of our committees and our preservation committee and our preservation awards committees. And she's done a great job for us, and I look forward to the program she's bringing us today. Kristi, with that, I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'm so happy to be the host for today's program. And today we are welcoming Brian and Sarah Clarke. Brian and Sarah are the owners of the 1790 Sloan-Porter House, one of the last remaining 18th century homes still standing in Mecklenburg County. Brian is a history buff, and he's also a commissioner on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Historic Landmarks Commission. Professionally, he's an administrative judge with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Sarah works in business technology at Wells Fargo, and in her free time, she loves traveling to learn about diverse cultures, personal essay and memoir writing, and being in nature. She's also currently exploring how to identify, grow, and harvest everyday plants for medicinal purposes. Brian and Sarah were also the recipients of the 2020 Charlotte Preservation Award with Distinction for their success in dramatically transforming their home, which embodied the essence of historic preservation and honored the legacy of the more than 200-year-old building. Thank you both so much for being here. And Brian and Sarah, we're just so very excited to learn more about the Sloan-Porter House.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Well, we're just going to dive right in. And one of the first things I want to ask is, what led you to purchasing the house?
Well, for me, it truly is something that I've always wanted to do. You know, bringing a house that was once beautiful and loved, but has been, sort of abandoned and forgotten, bring it back to its former glory. When I was a kid, my mom used to read me this book, The Little House, by Virginia Lee Burton. And, it's a story of basically exactly that, a house that was built and loved, but then abandoned and rediscovered and made beautiful again. So that story really stuck with me. Then also, traveling to see family in the eastern part of the state when I was a kid and growing up, and just seeing all these beautiful old, but often run down and neglected houses, out in the fields and in the towns, just always made me want to do something and bring a house back. So I'm really happy that I've gotten a chance to do it.
That's wonderful. So what were your plans in the beginning when you first acquired the house, and how did the process kind of change as you went along?
Well, when I first bought it, it was designed to be a long-term project. Obviously, it needed a lot of work, but not something that needed to be habitable right away. Life intervened, and about 4 months after, or 3 months after acquiring the house, my marriage at the time ended, and I needed a place to stay. So we had to very much rethink how we were going to deal with the house. And then not long after that, Sarah entered the picture. It was really about going from what was originally a very long-term project to really sort of triage almost, trying to figure out exactly, what needed to be done the quickest in order to make the house at least semi-habitable.
So as you're working through that, I'm sure everyone wants to know what resources you use. Did you use state tax credits? Was the Landmarks Commission staff supportive? Did you use online resources, Google, YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. So when he first brought me to see the house, he was, just hoping I wouldn't think he was crazy for buying it. And I was excited. I could see it immediately, the potential, and I wanted to help. And I have some, do-it-yourself experience from prior houses. I've painted a lot. I've done, minor repairs. So the first thing that needed to be done was to get, the electrical panel, the utilities, to be able to live in it, or even just to stay in it so that you could, do things in it. It needed water, it needed, electrical needed to be, redone to some extent. Those were some of the things that we hired contractors for up front. But, it was about 2 years after that we ended up getting the loan for the big stuff. So within that 2 years, we did stuff like we just replaced the toilet and the sink in the bathroom, so it wasn't as gross. We started refinishing floors upstairs in the bedrooms so that the kids would have a place a clean, and nice place to sleep when we were here. So neither of us had ever refinished floors before, but we used, YouTube and how-to articles. We just rented a sander from a local equipment rental. It was, very much trial and error for us. And, but we got the hang of it pretty quickly. A lot of scrubbing, just grime everywhere. So that's what we started doing in the beginning. Also the windows, the two main things were just getting it habitable and then securing it. So, there was a lot of broken windows. He took a class on how to restore old windows, which was awesome because it taught him how to build a simple steam box to steam all the old glazing off the windows. And it just happened so easily. And the box was made just by simple materials you can find every day. So that was because to hire someone to do that is really expensive. In fact, I said, you should probably just now do that on the side and make some money because, there's also not a lot of people around that can do that. Junk shops, Craigslist for hardware for the doors, to find antique stuff that would match. So yeah, I was very much, even stuff on the side of the road. Brian found an old antique sink on the side of the road. So there was just a hodgepodge of resources that we used.
That's awesome. With historic districts, we're always telling people that it truly is easy to restore your own windows, but they don't believe us. So we love that you're testifying to the fact that it is doable by people who, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you had experience restoring windows before this house, right?
No, I had never restored a window. I knew people that did. From living in Greensboro and being involved with historic preservation there. Sorry, we got cats that are being pet in the background. The David Hoggard, who owns Double Hung Historic Windows, is a friend from those days. So I pinged him for some advice and read some articles, but no, it was really a lot easier than I thought, especially with the steam box. You steam off the old glazing, steam off the old paint, and it really minimizes sort of the backbreaking labor of scraping and sanding and all that people like really dread when it comes to windows. But it really was, it was time consuming, but really doable.
That's so great. I'm gonna skip to a different topic and ask about the landmarks review process. And did you know when you bought the house it was eligible to be a local historic landmark? Can you talk us through, I think you did the listing and the research. Can you talk us through what that process was like and what was all involved with that?
Sure. So that was actually the very first thing I did. So after, and even I started on the research before we actually closed on the house, because it was something that I wanted just as sort of a point of pride. But with this particular house, it was not, had never been surveyed, it had never been inventoried. It was literally unknown to the local preservation community. So that was really the first thing I did. I reached out to Dan Morrill, who was the then director of the Landmarks Commission. And, I mean, I'll say honestly, not to as a criticism, but Dan was initially fairly skeptical. He was like, just because it's old doesn't mean it's necessarily landmark worthy. But as I got into the research and, sort of started discovering things, not only about the physical house, but about the people who had built it and lived here, I became more and more convinced that it was a great candidate for designation. So yeah, I wrote the report myself, which is fairly unusual. I now know. At the time, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't think anything of it, but I now know that was sort of unusual. But the Landmarks Commission was great to work with. Stuart Gray provided me with a lot of sort of help and advice and fine tuning of the survey and research report. And then, of course, eventually I sought appointment to the Historic Landmarks Commission. So now I'm there as a commissioner. But the process itself was fairly, was fairly straightforward. I had to do a significant amount of research on the history of the house, but knowing where to look for that kind of information was a challenge. Fortunately, though, we've got some great resources online that have been, for example, the Charlotte Neighborhood Toolkit. That's a website that has links to various resources to do research of old houses. But ultimately, Google was my friend. And when I Googled around enough, and it sort of pointed me in the right direction. And then it was about taking some of my pre-existing knowledge of historic buildings and architecture, because I've been involved in preservation since about 2004 in Greensboro. So I knew a little bit, but then, and especially when I figured out that it was actually a log house underneath the clapboards, and that it was very likely, and of course, there's always some amount of guesswork, but very likely built by a Revolutionary War veteran. Then I was like, okay, this is no question, this is a good candidate for landmark designation.
So if you did the landmarks report first, did the designation have any impacts? Did you have to go through a review process after designation, or were you kind of working on the house and working on the report at the same time? Are there any misconceptions about the landmarks process that you'd like to share?
No, we were definitely working on them in tandem, especially, once we got into that sort of triage stage of having to get the house at least minimally habitable. So I was working on the report, and then we were also, getting things like the electrical system upgraded so that I could, plug things in without being afraid that I was going to burn the house down, getting a new well drilled, things like that. So But, I think probably the biggest misconception about being designated as a landmark is that the Landmarks Commission is going to micromanage what you do with your house. And I mean, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, and Kristi, you know, because you've served on the commission's design review committee, that the commission is very pragmatic about, the changes that need to be made, because I mean, it's a house, we're not living in a museum, we're living in a house. So, things like, paint colors, that's the biggest one that I hear, oh, they won't let me paint my house a different color. Sure we will. So, I think that was and I knew some of this, but, certainly the commission explained as I was going through, what designation would mean. And, for the big, the bigger work, after the initial triage, we had to get a certificate of appropriateness, went through the design review process. But really, it was pretty seamless. I mean, I sort of said what I wanted to do, explained why, and, got the thumbs up and proceeded. So that was really easy. And I mean, frankly, for anyone who may be listening that has dealt with a homeowners association, the Landmarks Commission is generally much easier to deal with than a homeowners association.
That's great to know and great to share with everybody. I'm going to ask you probably the burning question on everyone's mind, budget. Can you talk us through a little bit about the budget of purchasing and restoring this home? Like, how did you decide what to prioritize first? And sort of as a second part to that, when you were thinking about prioritization, what did you DIY? What did you source out to a contractor? Anything you wished you hadn't DIY'd and would have hired a contractor for?
So, I'll let you talk about the budget, but I did want to point out before we get into numbers that this happened over a period of years. So like I said earlier, we were on our own doing a lot of DIY stuff before we got the loan 2 years later to get the main part, the L part, which had the most damage done by by contractors. So this was over. So the house was, you can talk about the original price and then ultimately how much you thought we spent over the years. But
yeah, so I mean, we were really fortunate in a lot of ways, because the house is 15 minutes from uptown. It's on an acre of land. So, and I mean, I'd been had my eyes open for just such a house for quite a long time. Fortunately, we were really able to get the house for a very realistic price. And, so we paid, and of course, this is public record, you could figure this out, but we paid $45,000 for the property. And, over 5 years, I mean, we've probably put $250 into it, but, that was in sort of drips and drabs here and there. The main renovation, which was what we had to get a loan for and get a contractor to do, was for $140,000. And when you're talking about, I mean, now the house is a little bit over 3,100 square feet, 4 bedrooms, now 2 full baths. It ended up being very cost effective. And so that we're, frankly, I mean, the money we've spent, we couldn't have bought a comparable house. I mean, just square footage wise, not even, materials wise, but square footage wise, we couldn't have bought a comparable house pretty much anywhere in Charlotte for that amount of money. And I will say that it was not easy getting a loan to do the renovation. The option that most people focus on is an FHA loan, a 503B renovation loan. Lots of hoops to jump through, and a lot of lenders aren't comfortable with that. Ultimately, it was the State Employees Credit Union that did the loan, and which I think was great, and that's sort of part of their mode of operation, is that they doing things on a more local scale with local decision making. So, they were really great to work with.
And as far as the, DIY stuff versus contractor, I mean, we had, up front, as part of the security, I put on my Home Depot credit card, the construction of a little fence in front, to go across by the street. We, like I said, started trying to get the bedrooms habitable so that we could sleep here. So we started with the floors, redoing the floors room by room, painting. Some of the rooms have drywall was perfectly fine and looked good. It might have been painted funky, but we repainted that. We teared out drywall where it didn't look good, we found beautiful wooden walls underneath. So, we scrubbed those. In the dining room, there was there was drywall, and then under that, there were several layers of wallpaper, and under that were bugs. So we did some bug treatment, and but we ended up being able to salvage those walls. We didn't even have to paint them. So mainly the floors and the walls. I think, that once you get those done, in the bedrooms and living areas, it just looks so much better. We learned as we went. Let's see what else.
Well, just from a, decision making about hiring a contractor, really, I mean, going into it, the only things we really actively considered hiring contractors for were updating the electrical, because you just don't want to mess with electricity if you don't know what you're doing, and then having a well drilled. I mean, that on the front end, that was it. We knew, once the big renovation happened, that there would be a lot that we couldn't do, like shoring up structural stuff. So for that, I mean, we knew we needed a contractor, but like Sarah said, that was 2 years. I mean, it was 2 years out. So, we did beyond electrical and well, we pretty much assumed we could do anything else that needed to be done. Perhaps that was wildly foolish, but we ended up doing it because we just sort of went down that path, and then we rolled with the punches and just figured it out as we went along.
Yeah, there wasn't really much pre-planning. It was just like, okay, we need to do this. Okay, we need to do that. Okay, let's work on this, and it was on the weekends because we both worked full-time jobs and had 7 children between us. So
yeah,
we put them to work too.
It was, every waking free hour for several years. But I mean, but it was great in a lot of ways. I mean, now looking back, it's really hard to even remember everything that we did and everything, just the difficulty of it. Because I mean, it was difficult, obviously, but it helped us grow closer. It helped the kids grow closer to us, and to Sarah, as their new the new stepmother, and well, eventually stepmother, but dad's partner. So I mean, it really was great in a lot of ways. And I think going into it, not knowing what we didn't know was actually a blessing, because we had no preconceived notions about how things should turn out. We made mistakes, we screwed stuff up, we went back later and fixed it. And I mean, and that's just, it's par for the course. I mean, this house was handmade by people who were not professional craftsmen. As one of our carpenter who did some work for us said, man, there's not a right angle in this house. and I mean, beyond the window sashes, I think that's completely true. I mean, everything is out of plumb. And, and that was just sort of freeing. It was like, all right, we don't have to be perfect, because the house isn't perfect.
We have relatives of the Sloan-Porters watching.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. I think someone asked how long the house had been abandoned. Do we even know that?
It hadn't been abandoned, meaning unoccupied, but for about 6 months. But the people that were living here were very unlawfully living here.
I mean, there was no kitchen here. They were basically cooking over a burn barrel in the yard, that type of thing. So
yeah, no running water, because somebody had cut the wellhead off to sell it for scrap metal. So yeah, I mean, there were human beings in the house, but that didn't necessarily make it any less abandoned.
So another question someone asked was, how much of the home was built in 1790 and what parts were built later?
So as originally built, it was a 2-story, 4-room log house. So the rooms that are basically the room we're sitting in was one of the original rooms of the log house, and then the room next door. It was this, from what I've researched, it was the seat of a plantation at the time that consisted of at least 500 and probably closer to 1,000 acres. So there was a business side and a family side of the house. It had 2 front doors, and then we found 2 back doors, but we don't know if they were both there from the jump. So yeah, it was originally a much smaller house, and then after the Civil War around 1889, December of 1889, the Sloans, who had bought it after the Civil War, got a small loan, about a little less than $700, and built the current house that you see around the log house. So kept the log. I mean, the logs are still there, but they raised the roof, and then added the back wing, the L, and added a side wing that is basically what has the bedrooms.
And then the bathroom was added in the 1930s, right?
Correct. The bathroom was added on shortly before World War II, so like 1938, 39, and which was the first time it was plumbed, and which actually really helped, because then it isolated the water to, sort of one very small area in the back of the house, so there wasn't water damage, from burst pipes or anything like that. So beyond, but it was really 1790, we think, 1890, and then just a little addition along the side of the L in around 1930 or 1935.
So how did historical accuracy play into your design and repair decisions? You need the working kitchen. You obviously need running water. You need to update the 1930s bathroom. I've heard there was an outhouse on the property. Obviously not living conditions that we function under in modern day. So how did that all work out?
Well, like we said, the bathroom and the kitchen were already here. So, and we didn't change where anything was. We just repaired where there needed to be repairs. And so the kitchen only had a sink and a couple of cabinets on the walls. So, we tried to use materials that may have been used then. We have like a soapstone counter and a wood island, and we got where the floors had to be completely redone in the dining room and kitchen. We used reclaimed wood from a structure in Gastonia, I think.
Yeah, it was cut from beams of a factory in Gastonia that had been torn down.
And we used eBay and so forth to get like antique hardware where we could. That would have been period. Where we couldn't, we found antique looking stuff. So like, one of the bathrooms is a shower. And I just honestly, I'd been to the Biltmore before, and I remember they had bathrooms in there. So I looked at pictures of the Biltmore bathrooms just to kind of give me an idea of what that feel looked like. What size tiles did they use and how far up the wall did they go? And so we did that with the bathrooms, and like the showers got a gold, looks like copper, but it's not, shower rod that curves around, so it does look, it looks authentic. So, and like we found one of the back doors when we did the back porch demo, and the original back porch of the log house is what we turned into the 2 bathrooms and the laundry room. And we found one of the back doors, and we left it there, and it's behind the sink in one of the bathrooms, and just to show that this is where one of the original back doors was. And we also left the logs exposed in the 2 bathrooms as well. So we left things exposed, and we found like blue milk paint around the some of the windows. And so we are trying to use that same color paint to highlight around the house where we can. But yeah, we really wanted to, and it takes some creativity too. Like we wanted to leave our own mark on it as well. So we went to one of those tile painting places in town, and each kid, and we all created a little tile, and we had those inserted in the corner of the laundry room, just so that, you know, sort of like a time capsule thing. So, but you know.
Yeah, so I mean, we really tried. I mean, you know, obviously, as I said before, it's not a museum, but we tried to keep everything, you know, historic looking. And I mean, when we could, reusing historic materials. So, you know, Sarah mentioned the floors. Another one, we created several new rooms from the back porch, the bathrooms and whatnot. So we needed some new doors to put on those rooms. So you know, I got on Craigslist and found some doors that were identical to the ones that were in the rest of the house, that had actually come out of the house the workers lived in Fort Mill when they built the Fort Mill Dam, which was demolished. So, you know, I bought those off of Craigslist, and, you know, we repainted them and hung them as doors. You know, I found we have rim locks on all the doors. So, you know, I found rim locks on eBay and in junk shops. I know I got a couple from Crosland Studios in South End. You know, and I opened them up, I cleaned them out, repaired them so that they functioned, and, you know, threw them on. So, you know, we tried to do that. But then, you know, like the chandeliers in the kitchen and in the dining room are, you know, sort of, they're black. They look, you know, antique-y, but they're modern. But, you know, so we tried to keep the look right, even if it wasn't all, you know, historic materials. You know, like one of the bathrooms has a clawfoot tub that's, you know, modern. It's not a restored clawfoot tub. But, you know, and again, we got that used. So almost everything, especially in the DIY phase, almost everything in this place, you know, we got either off of Craigslist, or eventually Facebook Marketplace, or from yard sales and thrift shops. And you know, it was all just scavenged, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so cool, right? Because that's how you probably kept your budget down, because new doors are really expensive, especially if you're going to get them, someone to make them to match what's in your house. So I mean, it's inspirational, right? To other people who are looking to do even maybe smaller projects than yours, that these things are out there. You just have to take a little time to find them, right?
Right.
Exactly. And, you know, and because, I mean, it's important to understand that, I mean, I think no historic renovation on a budget can also be on a tight timeline, right? You know, you have to do it over time, which is hard, especially if you're living in the house while you're doing it. You know, because it's chaotic. There's stuff where you don't necessarily want stuff. You know, we had to basically take all the furniture and pile it from one room to another room to a third room to a fourth room, you know, as we're refinishing floors and painting, and you know, which is not easy. But I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we've got this house, and, you know, the sort of all the memories and all the, you know, the experience of doing it all, and the, you know, sort of the pride of having done it. You know, and I mean, I really am sort of in awe of our own efforts, because it's like, you know, every single thing in this house was intentionally chosen. You know, there was almost, I mean, I really can't think of anything where we were just like, just do that. You know, it was all very, very intentional and, you know, like curated almost, which is neat. I mean, because it's very much, perhaps it's more me than Sarah, honestly, since I was, you know, collecting stuff before I even met Sarah. But, you know, it really is reflective of us. Which is you know, for a house that was in a single family for over 200 years, over 200 years. to sort of have it now be very reflective of us, I think is very cool.
That's so neat. And what a way to continue the legacy of the house and the fact that the inhabitants were the ones that made the changes and made the updates. And it wasn't, built by master craftsmen or professionals. And the
Right.
fact that you involved your family is so cool. Did it spark an interest in any of your children for construction or historic preservation? Or, I know if I was a kid, I probably would grumble a little bit about some of the projects.
There was some grumbling here and there. My son actually graduated from UNCW and came home in the middle of all this and couldn't find a job right away. So we ended up working with some of the contractors and actually helped dig under the kitchen when they were redoing it. So that's how he contributed. And then all the other kids, they were staining floors, painting, helping, to build the gravel parking pad. Pulling nails out of walls, you name it. And then at one point I mentioned I was having a realtor friend come look at it, and they got like really upset because they thought that they were coming to sell the house. So they're really attached to the house.
They're, for the most part, they're too young to really, they're not out on their own yet. Sarah's are, but even her daughter who's 20 is, I think her experience here has sort of better prepared her for, having her own home, because she's, this is, I'm sort of my observation, less intimidated by projects and just being like, hey, I got to do this. How, you guys probably know, how can I do it? And, so that they're just a lot less scared off by some of the things that need to be done. And, and my kids several of them are still, really young. So, and they love it out here. They're like, it's always, I think the youngest one, commented a couple of months ago, it's like, it's always an adventure. When we're out there with y'all, it's always an adventure.
Yes, because there's basically an archaeological dig out back where they threw their garbage for centuries. And the deeper you go, the older the stuff is. And so we're always finding really cool stuff on the property.
That is so neat. Are there any other projects that you want to do or you have planned to do on the house? Or are you done for now and taking a break?
No, we'll never be done. There'll be stuff left for the next generation too. We still have windows we haven't restored yet. They weren't the worst ones, and they're keeping the weather out somewhat still, but they still need to be redone. And we just had the fireplaces, or 2 of the 3 fireplaces working with this year, and so we still have to rework the trim around those. What else?
We literally just had screen doors hung on the exterior doors of the kitchen like a month ago, and I've got to paint them this weekend. Probably the big thing we want to do is get storm windows, so that help our heating and cooling costs a little bit, because as Sarah said, some of the windows are still not restored. They've been reglazed and they're doing their job, but they're maybe not the tightest thing in the world.
So if you were to do this all over again, what would you do differently? I guess we're looking for tips for people looking to do work on their own house. What would you recommend?
Honestly, we talked about this for a while this morning. That I think the honest answer is we wouldn't do anything differently, because we really feel like it played out in the way that best served us and best served the house, because just everything that we've talked about. I think probably the biggest tips when you're talking, especially when you're talking about contractors, contractors are not necessarily comfortable with old houses in a lot of ways. They're modern people and they build modern buildings. So, it's really, for us, I think limiting the amount of sort of general contractor kind of work that was done was a good thing. It put a lot more on us, obviously, but it I think ultimately was beneficial. With having the contractors with a very limited scope of work. And and I mean, some things that maybe we had done. I don't know. I can't really think of anything that we had done by someone else that we sort of wish we had done ourselves. So I mean, it really, I think the biggest tip, tips are, one, you can do it. Just stay away from electricity. Let the pros do electricity. But beyond that, I mean, there's really not much in an old house that you couldn't figure out, just with a moderate amount of desire.
And the internet.
And the internet, yes, the internet is of course our good friend. And but beyond that, I mean, patience is really important. Not letting perfect be the enemy of good, I think is the old saying. That just being okay with making mistakes and going with the flow. One of the things that really helped us, and this is just sort of part of the way we operate in general, but focusing on going with the flow and focusing on sort of more discrete projects rather than, because I mean, many people would just get overwhelmed by how much there was that needed doing. And we sort of fought that off by just focusing on this project and that project, and doing them in sequence where in ways that it made the most sense to us.
In a way, kind of like having blinders on. Okay, this weekend we're going to go refinish the living room floor. That's it. We're not going to look at anything else that needs to be done because it's just too overwhelming. We didn't really think of anything that we would do differently. As far as the heating and cooling, we did have an HVAC installed for the kitchen dining room part, which was the part that was totally redone. But we have window units in the other parts of the house. So, and then we just got 2 of the fireplaces working this winter as well. So I think there was another question and I lost it.
Yeah, I mean, so basically the original, the log part of the house doesn't have central heat or air. So it gets a little warm in the summer. It gets a little cool in the winter. Warm in the summer is the bigger problem. But we have ceiling fans in all the rooms. We have portable fans. We have space heaters. We make do. And and I'll say that first winter, where it was the winter of 2016, I'm here with all the kids. We had no central heat source at all. So I mean, it was down in the 20s, and we're space heaters and all piled into a king size bed. And while that may sound, oh, that's awful, I mean, it was sort of fun in a lot of ways, especially in retrospect. It was fun. At the time, it was like, oh my God, I'm a terrible parent. But in retrospect, it was great because I mean, that's stuff that the kids will remember and value for a long time. So my friend Laura asked, hey, how long did it take? So I mean, it's really about a 5-year process between when we started working on it and when we sort of declared we were done, except for the little projects that are more home improvement projects than restoration projects.
So someone else asked, have you found any old historical items on the property? And then we had another similar question. What was your biggest surprise you found as you peeled back the layers of the house?
Well, I mean, probably the biggest surprise of peeling back the layers was the logs, and not only that the logs were there and in such great shape, but they even still were chinked and still had whitewash on them. So especially on the back porch area where the bathrooms now are, the logs had been covered with siding with clapboards in 1890. So they were covered for over 100 years, so that the chinking and the whitewash was still there when we took those off. And then of course the bathroom in the back door that we found that's now in one of the bathrooms, when that got uncovered, actually we found painted in paint blue milk paint on the door frame the initials FHS. And eventually I figured out that those were the initials of Forrest H. Sloan, who was a kid who was 11 years old in 1890, born in the house, raised in the house, died in the house. And he had painted those very likely right before they closed up, put the siding on the back porch. So that was sort of cool. And then of course we found all kinds of weird little artifacts like this one I found most recently. It's probably 2-3 months ago. It's a Buick Emblem. This literally just appeared on the surface of the dirt one day. So it's a Buick Emblem made of brass or something. And I researched it. This only appeared on Buick cars made in 1912. So this is from a 1912 model Buick. Lots of patent medicine bottles. So this one is stamped Burwell and Dunn, Charlotte, North Carolina. So it's a pharmacy where they were mixing some kind of opiate and alcohol heavy medicine of the day. Medicine pots, milk glass medicine pots, lots of those. Snuff bottles. This is Helms Railroad Mills snuff. We even had some snuff in it. Lots of other little bottles. This is a Vicks bottle. The weirdest thing is we found this little Chinese pin. It's like blue enameled silver.
It was under a baseboard in one of the upstairs.
No, it literally just popped out from between the floorboards.
Oh.
I was vacuuming one day and it actually, like very early on, and this just appeared out of the floorboards.
We haven't been able to identify what it is. It's got
Chinese script on it. Apparently I had a friend of mine deciphered it as saying like Green Science School or something like that. No clue why it would be in this house, but it just popped out of the floorboards. So yeah, we find all kinds of weird stuff.
That's so cool. Someone else asked, are there any termite issues that you found?
There were. So the kitchen and the dining room, because of the slope of the land, by the time you get to the back of the kitchen, so you can see the light coming through the kitchen window back there, the floor joists were basically laid on the ground. There were no footings. I mean, we have fieldstone piers, but the floor joists were just laying on the ground. So they had been pretty much eaten away by termites and other bugs over the years. But it was really limited to the back. You can see some on some of the logs, you can see where some bugs had munched on them, but the wood is so dense that they chewed on the outside edge, and then they were like, this is too much work, so they moved on to something that was easier to gnaw on, we think.
And it adds character.
Yeah. And then I still have no clue what the little civilization of bugs between the drywall and the wallpaper in the dining room. Have no idea what those were, but there were, once we uncovered them and ran a dehumidifier in there for about a year, they went away.
That is really great. Oh,
sorry,
Kristi.
Angel. Should I turn it over to you to wrap up?
Yeah, let's do.
Okay.
Let's do one last question, and this is sort of my favorite question. I think it speaks to you guys doing this yourselves and being brave and taking your time with it. I would love to know something that you messed up in the house, and did you fix it, or have you fixed it yet?
Yeah, there were several things. Our first floor we redid. We'd never redone floors before. The sanding went fine, but then we started putting the stain down, and we're going to do it in stages. And that's a no-no, we realized, because if you stain one part and come back and try to stain the rest the next day, you're going to see that line. So we learned that the first room. But we've kind of resanded it and tried to fix it, You can't tell now. That room actually had a rug at one time on it where someone had painted the floor around the rug. So it was better than that. Let's see, we were staining the dining room walls, and we had 2 of them stained, and I was leaving for some errands, and my teenage daughter and her boyfriend were here. So I was like, you know what, while I'm gone, here, why don't you stain one of the walls? And I gave him the stain and rubbing stain and a rag. And then like a little while later, I got a text from Brian, wrong stain, love you. They had put, it was the wrong color. It was really dark and they didn't know. And they were just staining away with this wrong stain. So we had to sand that down and fix it.
But that took us it took us probably a year and a half
Yeah,
to get around to fixing that. Another example of you just got to go with the flow.
Yeah. Was there anything else?
Oh, I mean, there were lots. I mean, and this actually I just remembered about, the process of sanding. There's, having never done it before, like we didn't even know what equipment to get. So we had, rented one kind of floor sander and realized that was just totally not going to do the job. Like the one that's sort of a square thing that like vibrates, how, and that one wasn't going to do anything. So we had to go back and get the big belt driven, like 1950s, like big old, could probably sand through the earth down to the core of the earth if you wanted it to. So just navigating stuff like that. So, I mean, like literally, we rent this one sander, try to do it. It becomes obvious after a few hours that it's not really going to do the job. So then it's just like, all right, well, next weekend we'll rent the right thing and we'll get it right. So, and I mean, there's tons of stuff like.
And you can tell which windows we glazed versus the one that we had to get professionally done because it was too far gone. So, I mean.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's also sort of an important note, maybe that as you start doing this stuff, you'll see your skill improve. So, the first windows that I repaired, unfortunately, the first window is actually the oldest window. So my glazing job is not bad, but it's like very, very thick. The more experience you get with glazing, the smaller the glazing is. So, I mean, and that's just, again, I mean, I could go back and redo, the glazing if I wanted to, but, I do have probably 20 other window sashes that need more. So I'll get to those one day. I mean,
one day. It's an ongoing process. I think your friend Laura says you guys are so cool, which I agree with. This is really fascinating. One of the things that we shared on our social media was that your original windows on either side of your fireplace are over 200 years old, about the same age as the original windows for the 1774 Rock House. We don't have those original windows in the Rock House. And so ours are reproductions. And so it's really cool that you guys still have those and you were able to repair them. I am a window evangelist. And so I love that you guys did that yourselves. So if anyone, has any questions about restoring their old windows or replacing old windows for new ones, they know who to ask. It's you guys, not me, you guys.
And I'm a window evangelist with you. My blood boils whenever the replacement window commercials come on, and it's one of the. I mean, that one for me is really rewarding. It was really rewarding because it's just, here's something that was literally made by hand, for this house, for this window opening in this house, and you just can't replicate that.
Can't replace that.
I mean, you can hire a very, very skilled craftsman like Double Hung, who just finished restoring the windows at the Billy Graham home place at the Billy Graham Library, and they can make something that is identical and fits exactly like the original, but it's expensive, I mean, and it's a bargain, I think, for how long what you get will last, but it's not cheap. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one that I think you would be very surprised with just a couple of very easily obtainable materials from Amazon. That's all you need to restore a window. It's just that and a little time and a little, elbow grease.
Yeah. Well,
Angel, I think we should have Brian come back and do a class on window restoration and show us his steam box.
Yes.
And when we can all get together in person, let's, maybe a hands-on class. Sorry, Brian.
No, we'll do a whole, like, here's how to stain floors, and you can show
Yeah.
us
Well, I mean,
that
the
you're not
window thing,
supposed to do
I'm
it.
happy to do, because I mean, doing the class that I did was actually hosted by Preservation Greensboro at their architectural salvage operation. And I mean, just being able to see in person, seeing it done and ask
Helps.
questions really helped me get my head around, what all was involved. So
Well, that is a great resource that I did not know about, that they did, Preservation Greensboro, doing those classes. And so I'll be sure to note that down, because I think one of the things that we want to do is share some of those resources. So we are getting really close to time. I know, like, we could talk about this for like 2 hours, but thank you both so much for sharing your experience, and your passion for history. I think, as you said, with a little elbow grease and sweat equity, you really can take a historic home, a piece of history, and make it your own, and keep the history alive, and be able to share it with everyone else. So I hope this has been inspirational for everyone watching. I am going to put up a few after photos of their house that we can watch if you guys want to stick around, but I hope that you will all stick around and pay attention to what the museum's doing. We have several events coming up. We have an afternoon on the grounds this Saturday where it's $10 a car. You can come with your family, spend the holiday weekend exploring Charlotte history. We'll have some reenactors out to tell you about the Rock House and everything that's happening there. We are also hosting our African American Heritage Festival in June. That'll be a online and in-person festival starting June 8th. And then we'll be in person June 12th. We'll be opening a new exhibit. We'll have some performers. We'll have our exhibits open at the museum. So please go to the museum's website, charlottemuseum.org, to check those out. Thank you so much, Kristi, for being our guest host today, and being a wonderful committee member who we get to drag into things like this. Thanks to Paul, who did our introduction, and obviously to Brian and Sarah for sharing your experience with us.
here, let me throw out one additional just little piece of,
Go for it.
especially given the time of year. So obviously May 20th was last week. That was the anniversary of the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence. May 31st is the anniversary of the Mecklenburg Resolves. Alexander Porter, who originally built the log house, was one of the delegates at the Mecklenburg Committee on Safety that issued the Mecklenburg Resolves. So, that's the sort of the key tie to Revolutionary War history. And then he fought in the Revolution as well. But, to live in the house of somebody who took that step and voted to issue the Mecklenburg Resolves on May 31st, 1775 is pretty darn cool.
Yeah, pretty darn cool. He did that with Hezekiah, so you can, I don't know, how much you want people driving around your property, but you can come to the museum and then go hang out and knock on y'all's door and just accost you. But thank you again so much. Everybody should be able to see the museum's website on our slideshow, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you.